Good afternoon and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Corinne Elmore.
And my name is Jocelyn Shu. And we are the 2025 Directors of Diversity and Engagement here at the Institute of Politics. A few important announcements before the start of our program. Please take note of the exit doors located both on the JFK Street side and the Park side of the forum. In case of an emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in JFK Park. Please also take a moment to silence cell phones.
Since its inception in 2022, the Institute of Politics has hosted the Our Narrative Showcase to highlight the inspiring stories of our community. It has been an opportunity for students to share how their experiences have shaped their journeys to public service on the largest political stage on campus, the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum.
Especially in this salient time, it is more important than ever to protect and preserve spaces that uplift student voices and highlight the diverse narratives that each of us bring to campus. Today, you will hear from 6 powerful speakers from a variety of diverse backgrounds and perspectives. These are stories of unique journeys to public service and how they intersect with many of the pressing issues of today. They are stories of true resilience. We ask that you listen and learn from their narratives with an open mind and an open heart.
Before we begin, we want to preface that the views of our speakers do not reflect the views of the Institute of Politics or of any other speaker. Also, a content warning, this showcase will involve difficult topics such as death, homelessness, homophobia, and other themes that may be triggering for some. We would also like to acknowledge that one of our speakers, Sladen Cooper, is no longer able to perform tonight due to unforeseen circumstances.
We want to thank him and all of our amazing speakers for their commitment to our narratives. Thank you all for your hard work and for trusting us with your stories. We are so proud, and we are so excited to welcome you to the Our Narratives Showcase.
So, without further ado, introducing our first speaker from the class of 2025, she will be presenting her speech, Emergence from Silence, Searching for Truth, Power, and Identity Amid Loss. So please welcome to the stage, Madison Webb.
Don't pray aloud. The devil will hear you and curse you. My dance teacher would warn us before we ate lunch. Saying grace aloud was custom for me, but at 13, replicating rhythms and following commands took precedent in my dance studio. Don't ask questions, just do as I say. I am the descendant, the declaration, and the desire fulfilled of generations of the enslaved and the emancipated, protected and pioneered through praying aloud. But I was conditioned early on to equate silence to safety. At 14, I believe my mom had everything under control, but I also saw her frantically searching online for homes she knew we couldn't afford. My parents had separated in 2016 and life wasn't the same. With my dad losing his job as the breadwinner of the family, and my now single mother having to take on jobs that she didn't before, we were now on the brink of eviction. And as a freshman adjusting to high school, I had to keep it together. Silently but frantically anticipating the day that my mom, sister, and I would have to pack everything and leave my childhood home. I dreamed silently. Where to? To the nice side of Atlanta, where my magnet high school was, a 2-hour bus ride away from my hometown. But I dreamed eagerly because then finally I'd have time to do my homework instead of catching up on the bus ride to school every morning. I could finally fit in. I would no longer be the South Side kid commuting in from what students at the time colloquially referred to as the ghetto side of town. Ironically, the side of town that was predominantly Black. But suddenly, my dreams started to look different. I dreamed patiently. One day, I'll be safe. No more walking on eggshells in the kitchen while my mom cooked dinner. Soon enough, I wouldn't have to keep silent and watch. Soon enough, I could break this silence, but in October 2017, an eviction notice disrupted my freshman high school and ultimately my life's trajectory. During the eviction process, gas and electricity got turned off. The silence at night was deafening, but my mind and soul were stirring. We didn't know where we'd go. I was constantly on edge, quite literally because at my magnet high school, not only was I the South Side kid, but now I was being pulled in an even further opposite direction as the girl without a home. And weighed down by these labels, I began to reduce myself to just that. Staying with family friends wasn't a permanent solution. And trying not to pry and ask my mom when we'd get a real stable home again, I kept silent. I went from dreaming of a house by the good school to just a house, just something or someone to cling to. Silence would be that new and familiar and regular retreat. Friends began to take notice. You're just not as bubbly as you used to be. I'd initially been silenced by a fear of being cursed. But I was beginning to realize that silence is the curse. In the words of Audre Lorde, your silence will not protect you. But then I wondered, how does one protect themselves in the midst of destruction? What is left? What can be rebuilt? I eventually stopped hoping for my life, my family's life, to go back to normal, for a stable home. I stopped silently dreaming because I realized that my life, my dreams, weren't secure or guaranteed anyway. I soon realized that the only thing that made something real is the voice, speech, action. So after being evicted, I had to transfer high schools, but I joined my new school's debate team. I'd initially prided myself on being a good writer, never really a good speaker, until I fell in love with my words coming alive off of a page during my first debate tournament. I started attending weekly practices. My debate coach, a teaching fellow through Teach for America, recommended me for a local nonprofit started by one of Harvard's debate coaches to recruit Black youth to compete at the Harvard Debate Council's summer tournament. But I hesitated. What business do I have being at Harvard? A girl from the south side of Atlanta, from a Title I school. I believed it was too good to be true. But, like many anxious teens do, I took a leap of faith, I submitted my application by the 11:59 deadline, and I earned a scholarship to complete the year-round program in preparation for Harvard, and just 1 year later, I made history as the first Black girl to win the Harvard Debate Council's summer tournament. The head coach recommended me to join the debate team as a member of the class of 2025. And that same year, I won third place in the NAACP's National Oratory Competition. Despite setbacks and instability, it was clear that my voice resonated with people from around the world. It needed to be heard. Silence was the real curse. But even with this newfound voice and power, admittedly, my family's circumstances hadn't changed much at the time. We were still relying on food stamps. I realized that I had no control over my family structure and dynamic. But eventually I did have control over a few things. Over the past 8 months, I've been working as a recruitment coordinator at the Harvard admissions office, helping to recruit underserved students who were once like myself, afraid, stuck, and silenced by the structures they saw to be a hindrance. Their home, their schools. Studying sociology, I began to cultivate my academic voice. Naming, reframing, and questioning these social structures, the policies that uphold them. the tradition of Black intelligentsia and public service. And finally, as an artist, I sing and dance freely across stages, from Sanders Theater to Carnegie Hall, empowering others like you to do the same. Earlier, I asked, what can be rebuilt in the midst of destruction? But from my story, it's clear that it's not about what can be rebuilt, but what is left. When the structures that are supposed to uphold us are ripped from under us without explanation or don't meet our expectations. I lost faith in the school system that I thought would get me into a good college. I lost the childhood home that I thought to be the core of my identity. But even in the midst of these crumbling structures, I found a transcending voice. Don't pray aloud, they said. The devil will hear you and curse you, they said. But now I pray aloud. I dream aloud, and I ask the questions, knowing that my voice is what is constant. It is the foundation, and it can never be cursed. Only shared and in turn amplified to change lives. So now, I ask you, what are you ready to lose to discover your voice? Thank you.
Thank you, Madison, for your inspiring story about breaking the silence. Our next speaker is Ahmad from the class of 2028. He will be presenting When a Mother Has Nothing Left to Give, Environmental Advocacy, Family, and Public Health. Please give him a warm welcome.
Water. It has shaped every part of my life. Where I've lived, what I've learned, and the fight I've chosen. As a child in Munufeh, Egypt, the Nile flowed through my earliest memories. Its currents nurturing civilizations, sustaining life. In Bayonne, New Jersey, the Hudson River symbolized an unspoken promise of movement and change. Now, in Ormond Beach, Florida, I wake to the salty air of the Atlantic Ocean, the brackish waters of the Indian River Lagoon. These places are all connected by water, by the way it shapes the land, the way it provides, the way it demands respect. But it's also connected by something else. The way we take and take from it without thought. We take and take more, believing what the earth has to provide is endless. We call it Mother Nature for a reason. We speak of the earth as it exists to tend our very needs, to provide, to nourish, to accept our demands without questions. We take and take, believing it will never reach a breaking point. But what happens when a mother has nothing left to give? I didn't have to look far for that answer. Near the Nile, I saw the infiltration of consumer products. In Jersey, Hurricane Sandy flooded streets. That same truth kept playing out over and over again, now in Florida, as our waters, our beaches, and our springs are being poisoned by microplastics. It was then that I realized that the climate crisis is a health crisis. Just as we expect Mother Nature to always be there for us, we assume hospitals will always be open, medicine will always be available, and healthcare workers will be there to catch us when we fall. We take and take more, believing it will never reach a breaking point. But we're wrong. Climate change, pollution, and systemic neglect has pushed public health past its limits. Our air is being poisoned by particulate matter. Our water is being laced by microplastics. Our cities are being battered by extreme weather and disease. The World Health Organization states that by 2050, there will be an additional 250,000 deaths every year related to climate-related activities, such as heat, distress, and malnutrition. This isn't a distant crisis. It's happening now. And so that's why my work bridges science and public service. As a climate health advocate, I advocate for clean energy transitions, emergency readiness, and healthcare responses. But as a writer, I write to educate the next generation of leaders, which is why I wrote Layla's Toolbox, the first ever climate and health children's book about a young Muslim protagonist working to navigate the climate and health problems in her communities. Because if we want to change the future, we have to start with the stories we tell and how we tell them. Working with NASA, I developed a microplastic novel cleanup device to clean up microplastics from our water bodies. It was then that I realized that this isn't just an environmental issue, it's a human one. Again, it's infiltrating our food, poisoning our water, and it's increasing the risk of cancer and infertility. And the worst part, those who are on the front lines are the ones who are bearing the greatest burden. But we also need to rethink something else. We need to rethink leadership, care, and responsibility. I saw this firsthand in my own home. I grew up in a household filled with 6 North African Muslim women: my mother, my aunt, my grandmother, and my 3 sisters. That meant 2 things. First, I was never the rightful owner of my own clothes. And second, I grew up in a world where leadership was redefined. The world outside told me that power had to be as loud and aggressive as roaring currents. But inside my home, I saw a different truth. My grandmother showed me that strength could be quiet. Caretaking was not passive, but essential. And that those who sustain, those who hold everything together, are oftentimes taken for granted. My grandmother, Tita Layla, was like our water source. She nourished, she provided, she held everything together. The way forward is clear. We need to recognize the link between climate and health. We need bold innovation to tackle pollution at its root. We need youth activism to move the movement forward. Because this next generation isn't waiting to change the future, we're currently shaping it now. Leadership isn't about titles, care isn't about recognition without sacrifice, and responsibility for ourselves, our communities, and our planet belongs to all of us. My grandmother redefined what leadership meant in my house. Now, it's time we redefine it for the world. Because public health isn't an afterthought of environmental action, it's the direct reason for it. And if we shift our mindsets, if we place human health as a fundamental priority, then maybe, just maybe, we won't just mitigate a crisis, we'll build a future where no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmad, for your inspiring call to action. Our next speaker is from the class of 2028, Megan Blonigen, presenting Lima Beans, discovering identity, learning pride, and finding community. Please welcome Megan.
Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried what other people thought of her. This is the opening to my favorite childhood book, A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Some of you have probably heard of it or read it. Raise your hand if you have. Right. Great book, right? When I was in kindergarten, sitting on the scratchy carpet and ignoring the kid next to me who chronically picked his nose, I was riveted by the hilarious tale of Camilla Cream, the girl who secretly loves lima beans. But Camilla knows her friends would disapprove if they ever discovered this secret, so to blend in with her vegetable-hating peers, she says she despises them. On the first day of school, Camilla tried on 42 outfits to find one that would make the perfect first impression, but when she looked in the mirror, the girl who always tried to fit in was covered in odd, bright, multicolored stripes. And worse, they transform into whatever her setting entails. Her skin turns red, white, and blue during the Pledge of Allegiance. Her skin turns purple polka dotty and checkerboard patterned as the kids point and laugh at her. Camilla morphs and morphs, a punishment for her inability to be her true self and a consequence for her constant need to blend in. Finally, Camilla admits that she does indeed love lima beans and even eats some to prove it, and the crazy morphing finally stops. I truly loved this book as a kid, but I only began to really understand it around December 2021. After months of questioning and confusion, I finally acknowledged my bisexuality at the age of 15. Coming to this conclusion was empowering. I was incredibly proud of this intricate journey of self-discovery until I fully assessed my environment and realized how unsafe I was as a queer teenager. My hometown of 1,029 residents is in the middle of rural Minnesota, where there are more cows than people, and gossip spreads past a 20-mile radius in less than 20 minutes. Literally, it's impressive. Most of the community, including myself, are brought up in a strict Catholic household and are taught a rigid moral code that has no room for those kinds of people. My hometown taught me a lot about the value of a close-knit community, but it's also a sheltered and homogenous group of people who are not really exposed to different ideas and perspectives. During the pandemic, I challenged my stances on modern issues, completely contradicting the values that I had been brought up on and recognizing my sexuality in the process. I'm proud of who I am, but refuting the ideas of my loved ones was confusing and potentially life-threatening considering the religious environment I was in. My knee-jerk reaction, similar to Camilla, was obvious. Lie and blend in. I came out to close friends, but avoided revealing the truth to anyone else. Since the age of 15, I have been perpetually careful. I could lose friends, I could lose opportunities, my accomplishments could lose merit, I could be kicked out of my home or shunned by my church. Everyone would see me differently. I even saw these consequences play out in front of me. A friend of mine who was openly queer was tormented constantly at school, being ridiculed with slurs and mocked for the way they dressed, the way they spoke, and their very presence in a room. It stood as an intimidating example of what could happen if the wrong people found out. Like Camilla, I would be an oddity, someone to be gawked at and ostracized because of a single aspect of myself. But I knew the consequences were much worse than just being seen differently. I could lose my life. Someone once mentioned my sexuality in class, and another student started interrogating him. Where does she live? What car does she drive? Trying to find out my personal information for God knows why. It was threatening, it was daunting, and it only accentuated the necessity of blending in and staying quiet. But like Camilla, hiding this information is just as difficult as revealing it. I'm proud of who I am. I don't want to be scared of this part of me. I want my friends and family to know me, every single aspect of me. I love my vibrant stripes, but I knew I had to hide them for my safety. I've been caught in this complicated web for years, a web all too familiar for queer people in rural areas across the country. I've practically redefined myself since coming to Harvard. My first day here, I came out to my two closest friends, my roommates, who are both here today. Raise your hands. And they immediately welcomed me with reassurance, kindness, and open arms. The first week I was here, I went to a campus event and I got 2 pride stickers that I immediately taped up on my wall, the only pride symbols I've ever owned and displayed. This semester, I was even chosen to be head of the Gender and Sexuality Coalition here at the IOP. This title initially terrified me, but now I'm incredibly proud to tell other people that I have this role, because the coalition gives queer students a space to connect with each other and share their experiences and discuss critical current events that impact us the most, something increasingly important in a political climate like this one. This sense of safety and feeling of being welcome is one of the best things that's happened to me since moving to college. But right now, I'll admit, it's easy for this sense of safety to feel compromised. But threats to my safety do not change my identity, and they never will. That's why I'm on this stage today. I know the speech is recorded, and people from my hometown will likely see this. They will see Camilla Cream, they will see funny stripes, and they will laugh at me. But I wanted to tell my story anyway, because other queer teenagers need to know that things do get better. You will learn to embrace yourself, you will feel safe, you will feel welcome. Other people need to hear my story because, just like Camilla Cream taught me, knowing other people like lima beans makes it a lot easier to love your stripes. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for your bravery and moving story of self-discovery and empowerment. Our next speaker is from the class of 2028, presenting Exhale, Finding Power and Purpose Through My Voice. Please welcome to the stage, Gabrielle Demuren.
Breathe in. Breathe out. In. Out. My heart was pounding. I hadn't moved yet. I was completely out of breath, winded and overwhelmed, as if my body was trying to keep up with the weight my mind couldn't carry. Like most battles I faced, this one too felt like mine alone to conquer. Life has a way of stealing your breath. Not all at once, but slowly, question by question, responsibility by responsibility, until one day you realize you're not out of breath from running, but from surviving. I had my first panic attack at 13. My family was in crisis. My mom collapsed while running a 10-mile race and was rushed to the hospital. She underwent multiple surgeries and even had to relearn how to walk. Her strength became our anchor, but watching her struggle shattered our sense of normal. It was the first time I ever saw my father cry. That moment, frozen in my memory, told me just how serious things were. Without my mom's income, our financial strain deepened. My siblings and I had to leave the school we'd always attended, the place that had shaped our early years. And my family and I moved across the state of Maryland and into a new home. And I started 8th grade at a new public school where I didn't know a single soul. See, I'd always been the student who'd welcome the new kids, but now I was the outsider. Within months, everything had flipped upside down. And just as I was getting to adjust, making new friends and finding myself in this unfamiliar place, COVID hit. The isolation was suffocating. My mom was improving and my younger siblings seemed okay, but I felt trapped. My anxiety skyrocketed. The uncertainty, the political climate, Endless news cycles, images of Black lives lost and people marching, it overwhelmed me. I was angry, I was scared, and I was confused. But somewhere in that confusion, a spark lit inside me. Being a first-generation American of Nigerian and Jamaican Cuban heritage, I'd always lived between worlds. At home, my roots were alive, reggae blasting during celebrations, rice and peas simmering on the stove, cousins laughing over dominoes, then the steady rhythm of Afro beats and the hymns of my Nigerian church. In those spaces, I felt whole. But outside, I learned what it meant to be Black in America, navigating spaces not built for me. It didn't matter how much I tried to prove my worth to the world, I was just another Black girl. A phrase tossed with disdain as if my identity were something to overcome. So I code switched. I performed. I tried to shrink myself to fit in, to be liked, to be judged by my passions rather than my appearance. It took time, but I began to understand that my identity wasn't something to change, it was something to celebrate. My voice and my story and my culture wasn't a contradiction, but it was my superpower. Even as I found the courage to speak out, I still carried silent burdens. Quarantine gave me the stillness to reflect, to begin healing and asking deeper questions. Why must families uproot their lives when challenges arise? Where was my family's support in our time of need? Why was my identity seen as a threat? And why does the world keep spinning while so many of us feel stuck beneath it? In high school, I craved answers, joining student government not just for structure, but for purpose. With few leaders to look to, I decided to step up, using my voice to carve a path for others. That decision led me to county meetings, executive events, and deeper questions about how policy works, and more importantly, who it often leaves behind. As the only Black girl in many of my advanced classes, and later as school president, I saw how often students of color felt invisible. So I worked to change that, creating spaces where the most vulnerable felt seen, heard, and supported. But it wasn't just what was happening inside school walls that I wanted to change. Despite my county's diversity, there was almost no public celebrations of African American contributions. It felt like an entire legacy had been underlooked. That's when I proposed the first ever Black History Fest. Despite months of doubt, outreach, bureaucracy, and months of planning, I used my position as student member of the Recreation and Parks Board to secure a location, get funding, gain approval, and bring the event to life. And when the day finally came, hundreds showed up, including government officials. I brought together the community to spotlight Black-owned business owners, powerful speakers, and performers who moved the crowd. It was a joy. It was pride. It was a community. It was a breath, deep and collective. The second year, it grew even bigger. We introduced a scholarship ceremony honoring 14 Black student leaders and athletes. What began as frustration turned into a movement, one rooted in visibility, celebration, and change. That moment, Black History Fest, marked a turning point in my journey. It showed me that my voice could move people, that pain could become power, and that service wasn't just something I did, but it was who I was. Perseverance has been a thread throughout every chapter of my life, from learning to breathe again after my first panic attack, to creating spaces where others could finally exhale too. By pouring into others, I learned what it truly meant to serve, not just to survive, but to live with purpose. I found my voice, my power, and my calling. The challenges I faced weren't just hardships, they were wake-up calls. They reminded me who I am, who I could be, and who I am called to serve. People whose stories mirror mine, rooted in struggle but reaching for change through community. Now at Harvard, I feel more empowered than ever to reflect daily, breathe deeply, and use my voice intentionally. I plan on bringing Black History Fest here to create new spaces of celebration and advocacy. I want to continue to live my life as my multicultural, full, and multifaceted self, and helping others to do the same. Because I know now I don't have to carry the weight alone. I don't have to shrink in fear or hide my emotions. My identity strengthens me. My community roots me, and my voice, once stifled, now resounds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for your words of resilience and a building community. Our next speaker is Henry Pahlow, class of 2028, presenting Voices from the Heartland, My Experience Bridging Rural Divides. Please welcome Henry.
Just off Wisconsin Highway I-43, you'll find a pleasant but weathered sign. Welcome to Maribel, Wisconsin. Population, 350. Venture further, and you'll get held up at our one intersection. Surrounding you will be a plethora of cornfields and cows, swaying in a cool spring breeze, or buried in a blanket of snow. If you're extra ambitious, you might go to Maribel Caves County Park, our claim to fame. All in all, the trip should take you around 5 minutes. For most, Maribel is a forgettable rest stop, a byway on a journey to more important places. But for me, I call it home. Now, despite its charm, Maribel is one of thousands of communities across America trapped under the label of civic desert. Students interested in government lack both access to civic education and opportunities to engage in good faith conversations about politics. How does one pursue public service in such an area, outside of the reach of national news media and on the fringes of our national political conversation? For my entire life, I've asked this very question. Even as I stand before you today, the first in my community's history to ever attend Harvard, I wonder if I fully know the answer. The fact of the matter is, in rural America, government is nowhere near the front of anyone's mind. No matter who's in power, rates of trust in government remain lower. Miles away, legislators in Washington appear to be more concerned with their re-election than how they're going to help a family farm, or how they might assist parents as they try to put food on the table in a community without a grocery store. Beneath these neighborly veneers, our national divides have begun to seep in. Politics sits in the back of all of our minds, this sort of uncomfortable truth that we refuse to reckon with. One day, a campaign sign goes missing. The next, a discussion with your neighbor about the village board turns into a debate about whatever was on Fox News last night. Just last year, a best-selling book by the New York Times posited that it was this hidden rural rage that posed the greatest threat to American democracy. I fundamentally disagree with this notion. My public service journey has always been about bridging these divides, opening access to civic education for rural youth, and uplifting rural stories and issues. Above all, growing up in a rural community has taught me the way forward, neighbor-to-neighbor conversations. Now, hear me out. Initially, any thought of politics would bring me a similar sense of dread. Entering high school at the height of the pandemic, I was both isolated and distraught at the state of our national affairs. That all changed when my dad said, "Henry, you're not going to make any change by simply talking about it. You need real, tangible action." He drove me to the office of the Manitowoc County Democratic Party, which, judging by the beads of sweat forming on my neck, lacked any sort of air conditioning. I was a rookie, sure, but they were taking any volunteers they could get. It was an uphill battle from the start. The distance from door to door and voter to voter was enough to make any field organizer faint. As a progressive in a largely conservative area, I hesitated at each door, afraid that I might be shooed away by a torrent of curse words. Why push forward? Because I believe that at its core, public service is about community. The same person you passionately debate with one day will be shoveling your driveway after a snowstorm the next. Going door-to-door canvassing allowed me to see the issues, which I knew only as blaring headlines, as personal stories. I could read about the economy in the news or talk with a man who had lost everything when it collapsed during the pandemic. I could passionately debate about healthcare policy, or I could engage with a single mother struggling to afford necessary medication. It is only when these ideological divides begin to seep in that we lose sight of our collective humanity. So, having engaged on these conversations with strangers, I figured that the next logical step would be to bring it to my school. However, I feared what the ramifications of openly expressing my progressive viewpoints might be. Ultimately, it wasn't the judgment of a stranger that worried me. It was that of my peers. My social studies teacher, Mr. Olson, challenged this notion. He said, "Henry, if not you, who else?" Together, we founded a civics club, part debate club, part voter registration initiative. Month after month, we gathered in Mr. Olson's classroom to discuss the prominent issues of our time. First, the minimum wage, then gun control, and so on. Initially, we were hampered by a collective unwillingness to speak our truths, or even engage with those on the other side of the aisle. However, meeting after meeting, the lines that once divided us into factions faded and were replaced by a sense of mutual respect and understanding. In a tiny classroom at a school of only 500 people, we could have the sort of conversations that our members of Congress choose to avoid on the regular. My public service journey shifted from seeing how I alone could be a bridge builder to empowering my peers to do the same. In rural America, we're lauded for our sense of community. Where better to equip the next generation of leaders to bridge these divides? Now, as I return home, I worry that I may have become isolated from the nuances of rural life, or struggled to connect with my former self, who feared the power of his own convictions. Even today, I feel as though I'm walking in two worlds. The optimism and affluence of progressive organizing spaces, and my hometown peers, who struggle to believe in engaging in a system that they felt never truly cared about them. Today, my public service journey has taken me to Harvard, the pinnacle of knowledge and opportunity. And yet, I still feel indebted to Maribel and those who inhabit it. The individuals that taught me the value of community and pushed me to fight for change even in the most uphill of battles. That's why, after my time here, I intend to return to the very communities that raised me. Politics isn't about choosing sides. It's about uplifting every single voice, especially those that have gone unheard for far too long. Rural America has the opportunity to fundamentally reshape our political system, and it begins by empowering rural youth. No, rural America is not the biggest threat to our democracy. It is our opportunity to save it. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, for your journey bridging divides and supporting civic education. Our last speaker is from the class of 2026. He will present Why I Knock, Grief, Gratitude, and a Son's Promise. Please welcome to the stage Jonathan Haileselassie.
Saturday, May 6, 2018. The day I'll never forget. It was early in the morning, the sky still dark. Must have been around 4 or 5 a.m. when the knocking first rang out. I didn't know who it was, but I was always a curious child. So I rushed out of my room down the white corridor of my home in Kansas City, Missouri, my feet racing each other, feeling the rough carpet underneath. I grabbed the corner of the wall to my right as I beamed to the side door, beating both my sister and my mother. I opened the door and found my aunt standing there covered in their traditional netzala. White, ceremonial, familiar. Cloth I had seen many times at weddings, birthdays, happy events. But this time they weren't worn for celebration. The silence was deafening. I stood there frozen, trying to stress the last moments before the words escaped their mouth. There was a moment, too heavy, too still. My mother's heartbreaking wail shattered the silence. You see, she had connected the dots my mind refused to put together. My father, Haileselassie, Gabrielle, had passed. That morning, I lost my father, but that wasn't the only thing that had changed. My mother wore black day after day, not for a week, not for a month, for 5 years. No color, no fancy dresses, no jewelry. Just her wedding band and a love she refused to let go of. Yet despite the enormity of her grief, still, she went to work, she studied, she prayed, she carried everything without complaint. She never talked about how challenging it was, and I suspect I'll never find out, but I saw it. In brief glimpses when she thought I was asleep, in those small moments she allowed herself to feel her pain. Sometimes I see her in my thoughts. I see her stretch every dollar, see her walk into rooms where no one looked like her, spoke like her, really understood her, and still hold her head high. And watching her do that, how could I not follow suit? I mean, what kind of son would I be if I let her sacrifices go unseen? So, when I had to stay up late to finish a project or skip time with friends to lead one, it wasn't hard. It was the least that I could do. I mean, you see, I didn't realize it then, but my mother was building something. A shield, a foundation, a future. She was protecting my faith, my hopes, and my dreams so that one day I might have the audacity to believe I could change the world. So I learned strength isn't loud. It doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it just shows up and refuses to leave. And that's what I carry with me now. She protected me from so much suffering, shielding me from the weight of our reality so that I could grow as I did, so that I could dream as I do, so that I might one day change that world for the better. So that despite our circumstances, I could see beyond them and my heart remained open to new possibilities. So that at 15, I would get my first summer position volunteering to help others, so that at 16, I would serve on the Court and Community Engagement Committee with the Municipal Courts of Kansas City, join the leadership of the newly created Black Archives Youth Network Coalition, join Morning Star in their effort to vaccinate over 27,000 people in the inner city of Kansas City, allocate millions of dollars in utility and rental assistance, give away over 1 million pounds of food to families who needed it, so that at 17 I would represent my peers as their student body president about threats to our safety, and so that at 18 I would become the first in my district's history to attend Harvard College, and so now I stand here having just finished my term as co-president of the Harvard student body. You see, every room I enter, every cause I fight for, everything I advocate for, I carry my mom. And when I grow weary and tired, I remember the version of me that she believed in, even when the world gave her every reason not to. I used to think public service was something you learned, something you studied. But my public service is rooted in my life. It's in the quiet sacrifices, in the moments no one saw, and the strength it took just to survive. I served because there was no one there to help her carry the weight, no one to say, let me make this easier. No one knocking, offering support instead of sorrow. So now I knock. I knock for the families out there still waiting. I knock for the kids like me who just need someone to believe they're worth more. I knock because I refuse to let strength like hers go unnoticed. I am becoming a man shaped by gratitude and guided by purpose. A man who knows what it feels like to ask, why, God? Why us, God? Why me, Lord? And find the answer not in the pain, but in what you choose to do with it. I know now everything I am, everything I've been able to dream of, everything I've worked so hard to become is because of one woman's refusal to give up. And now it's my turn to be the person I wish had been there, to build that world I wish she had walked into, to make sure the next child growing up like I did can dream. Not because the world makes it easy, but because someone made it possible. That is my why. That is my story. Thank you for listening. And to my mom, where's the camera? It's somewhere. My mom, I love you more than words can express. And my gratitude is as far-reaching as the universe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that powerful speech and testimony. And please give a big round of applause for all of our amazing speakers tonight. You all have put in so much work throughout this semester, and we are so immensely proud, and it has been an honor for the two of us to be able to work with you throughout the semester.
Truly. And also a big thank you to the IOP Student Executive Team, Director of Student Programs, Kathy Park, Director of Communications, Bridget O'Rourke, and the IOP Spring 2025 Fellows for working with us and our speakers throughout the semester. Our showcase is only made possible by the incredible people here at the IOP.
And thank you to Forum staff and students for your support in hosting this amazing event. And a big, big thank you to all of you for coming and for listening to our student stories. In the words of the late Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. So we hope you learned as you listened and are called to take those lessons with you in your own endeavors.
Thank you all again, and have a great night.